Okay, welcome to part 3 of the journey of your game. Last video was very much based around knowing your end game, reverse engineering from that point, sharing that, being deliberate in everything that you say and do, and ultimately understanding the correlation between difficulty, reward, delayed gratification, and joy in the now, or the opposite of all of that. But this one's a slight detour, right? But it's a really good thing to know, and that is knowing when to exit. Okay. Knowing when to exit is really, really purposeful because some people don't know how to do this.
I would suggest, Steve, that 99.99% of people don't know how to do this. In fact, it's almost built into our biology and our psychology to not know how to do this. This is something our DNA missed out on. We suck at this as a race. We are awful. We're awful. We're like that. You ever seen that bird that's like known as the most courageous bird in the world? And it like attacks lions and stuff and it just doesn't know when to stop. People are amazed by that bird. I can't remember what it's called. Is it like the honey badger or something? I don't know. But it's funny to watch. Like you watch YouTube videos of it, you're like, this thing is crazy. Like it's going to get killed. It just keeps going. But humans are exactly the same. We don't know when to exit. But if you can master it, man.
It's huge. It's huge. And so the purpose here is like what I'd like you to think about is stop losses. And so stop losses are a really interesting thing and they need to be backed with logic. Okay. And when you start to actually study systems of all kinds, there is stop losses in place that essentially ensure that you don't get to the bottom depths and sometimes death. Okay. I remember back to as a kid, I was at Dreamworld on the Gold Coast and they have this ride called the Tower of Terror. The Tower of Terror essentially scoots you along and then shoots you vertically up into the sky. It's like really, really high. And then you go backwards and then essentially the whole thing is just backwards and back into this shed where you started. And the whole thing's driven by magnets. So it's kind of like electromagnetics. The magnet, on the bottom is like stuck to the little cart that you're in. It propels you along and then flings you and lets you go. And then the magnet's there to catch you again. Now, I remember being on this ride, and I'm really glad that whoever designed this ride put stop losses in place because essentially what happened is we flew up. Yay, it's great. We get to the top and we go on 100 million miles an hour backwards. And I'm like, this thing isn't slowing down to where I was lining up. And so we went flying all the way past back where we were meant to stop because the magnets failed. And then essentially it got caught on hooks. Like a ratchet system that essentially slowed us very, very, very severely before we went flying out the back of the shed to our death.
Wow.
That's stop losses. And then they closed the ride and like, okay, we got some malfunctions here. And I'm like, wow, that was insane. How quickly you go from like, yay, to like, I'm going to die. That is a stop loss. Okay. And if that wasn't designed, meaning you're like, nah, just full send it. And it doesn't even matter what happens when you go backwards. We would have gone backwards out the back of the shed and I would not be here recording this right now. That's a form of a stop loss. You see circuses, they've got the whole nets underneath them. So yeah, they're not harnessed on, but they're not going to hit the ground if they don't successfully land it.
Yeah. The show Who Dares Wins, like that final challenge, was never as scary as it may have looked on TV. There was always a stop loss in place.
For sure, right? Like rock climbing, even the true rock climbers, they're always hinging a stop loss behind them, unless you're that crazy dude that did free solo and climbed El Capitan with nothing. But most of the time there'll be a stop loss, meaning when things don't work out for you, yes, you'll go backwards, but you're not going to die. It's not going to mean you're the end of the journey. Okay. And so what I'd like to think is, and give you some practical tips here, is what are your stop losses and what are the indicators for the stop losses? This is where it becomes purely logical, because when things aren't going really well, as you'll know, Dustin, maybe love for you to dive into this, emotions will ramp right up. It'll distort the world around you and you'll make more dumb decisions. If you've ever played poker with the person, or blackjack, with the person that gets overwhelmed by emotion, they don't know how to exit. And so I'm all in. And you're like, dude, if you actually thought about the cards that you had in your hand, you would have folded and you would have folded well and you would still be in the game to win. A mate of mine's a brilliant poker player and all he does is play mad long game and pretty much never plays anything that he doesn't have a logical calculation of, knowing the cards, that he'll have a good shot at it.
Yeah,
That's
nice.
a knowing when to exit. So I'll give you my personal one. I set the three stop loss rule, meaning end game's in sight. I've reverse engineered the steps to get it. I'll attempt something 3 times and allow essentially 3 strikes or you're out type stop loss sort of situation. Meaning, okay, I'm going to attempt this market and this approach. If we're going back to the triangle, I'm going to try this approach. And my approach is going to be move fast, go straight in, whatever else it needs. I'll try it the first time, bombs. Okay, interesting, 1x. I'll try it a second time, bombed. Okay, interesting. I'll try it a third time, bombed, and then I'll realize, okay, it's backed by logic. I've attempted the same approach 3 times in a similar situation. All 3 have not worked. Let me see what I can iterate quickly. That's a form of stop loss. Another stop loss is financial stop losses. How much are you willing to invest in a particular venture with no apparent return before you realize, okay, here's where we should draw the line, retain some capital, and draw the learnings out of that scenario. It's a really interesting thing, Das. What's on your mind?
Yeah, that's fascinating. I love the logical approach to it, the actual practical approach to it, because knowing when to exit for some people is such an emotional thing. It's like, no, but this is my business. This is my baby. This is my passion. Or if you get more specific, it's about, no, this is this really cool marketing idea I came up with. This is this book I wanted to write and release to the world, but it's just not working. Like, the deeper and deeper and deeper you go, no matter what, exiting is difficult because emotion gets in the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Applying logic to the situation resolves that.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing, I'll give you
easier said than done, though.
For sure. And I'll give you a story around this. Like, you can actually really use the stop losses as a leverage point. If there's one sort of concept I'm fanatical about in the world of business and strategic thinking, it's the art of leverage. And I was in San Francisco writing The Opposite Effect, and I went to the Golden Gate Bridge, and it was raining, and we were waiting for this bus to try and take us back. And hours went by and no bus came for us. And I ended up meeting this elderly couple called Joe and Stella, strangely enough from Brisbane. We got chatting for a while, and Joe was a very successful businessman in his time, and now he's retired and traveling. And a couple of interesting lessons that he taught me that I'd love to share with you in closing here. One was, Stella was getting really pissed off at this point. She's like, said the bus was every 45 minutes. We've been here for 2 hours. We're standing around. There's no bus. What's going on? Nobody knows what it is. And Joe said, Stella, the man with the gold makes all the rules. I thought, interesting. And Stella's like, what do you mean by that? And I was kind of the same. Like, what do you mean by that? She's like, well, we've given the gold to the bus company. They now get to determine and make the rules. The moment we decided to hand over our gold, we no longer have the power to make rules. So if they want to go for lunch for 2 hours, there is nothing we can do about that. They've got the gold. And I was like, that's interesting. And he goes, it kind of reminded me of a story, Steve, when I first started in business with my brother. I was young, in my early 20s, and we started to sell fruit. The strategy was to buy a lot of fruit from farmers, and would go to fruit markets on a Saturday morning and would sell a lot of fruit. My brother was particularly ambitious. So we all put all of our money into fruit. He said we invested tens of thousands of dollars into this fruit, and we put it all in. He goes, strangely enough, that morning was very much like today, rainy, drizzly. The market didn't come. He says the problem with the fruit as a business model is it has no real shelf life. We had to sell it that Saturday. Otherwise, we're broke. It got to about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and there was no one there, and the time was running out, and we realized, okay, us standing here will not work. No one's coming to us. And so he said to his brother, this is Joe, we have to cut our losses here. We have to cut our losses. We have to take this fruit. We have to do something else with it. Us standing here is not working. We've done that enough. The stop losses have been in place. There's enough evidence now that this will not work. We cannot stand it. So he started packing up, and the brother was like, no, we can't do it. We can't do it. He goes, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to walk the streets, and we're going to sell fruit for cost at best. We're going to do that for 2 hours until 5 o'clock before everyone wants to go home. And the brother's like, no, we can't do that. And he's like, well, at least we're getting some losses back now. Okay. We're reversing our losses. So that's better than nothing. These are reverse earnings. And he says, once it hits 5 o'clock, all we're going to do is we're going to give away every skerrick of fruit to families, to the homeless, to whoever we can see. We're just going to give it all away. And the brother was like, well, we're losing more money. Why don't we keep it for as long as we can? He's like, no, got to know when to cut your losses. And so they lost a lot of money that day. But what they didn't realize is they leveraged the loss. And Joe's strategic smarts of let's give it all away, that will create social proof and a leverage point for us in the future. And all we have to do is when we give the fruit away is to say, try it. I'm sure you're going to love it. We're back next Saturday with some fresh fruit. Would love to see you there for your next one. He says, that's what they did. They gave away all their fruit. They lost heaps of money. The next Saturday came around. The gods blessed them with sunshine, and they were the busiest. They were the busiest one in the whole fruit market. Why? Because they went out there. They knew when to cut their losses. They regained as much capital as they could just selling at cost, and then they built goodwill. That's strategy. That's knowing when to exit and leveraging the exit to get the most they possibly could out of it, rather than wallowing there until 5 o'clock going, we lost all our money. No one came to see me.
Yes.
There's a lot of wisdom in that.
And in that moment, it would have been very easy to let emotion overwhelm and sit there in sadness and pity.
Yeah.
And say,
and say, I'm never going to do fruit again. I'm so stupid.
Yeah.
Nice. You can leverage the positive and everything.
Well said. Questions.
Thanks, Joe.
Questions. Yeah. Thanks, Joe. Questions, thoughts, comments, links to fruit at cost prices below.
Yep. Actually, one question I'd love to hear from our community down below is, when's a time in your life when you made the conscious decision to exit and it paid off for you?
Yeah, would love to hear it.
Because I think that will reaffirm that it's okay to know when to exit. It's actually smart. It's smart to do. It's not a loss. It's a smart thing to do.
Nice. Love it.